Bill 199. And so, Kyle, would you give us a briefing on that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 199 would make amendments to the Kansas Fireworks Act, which concerns regulation and licensing of distributors of fireworks in the state of Kansas. Under current law, the definition of distributor is defined very broadly to include anyone engaged in the distribution of fireworks of any kind in Kansas, excluding seasonal retailers. Under this new bill, the definition of distributor would be replaced with three more specific distributor definitions. One, distributor of display fireworks, distributor of articles pyrotechnic, and unlimited distributor. Additionally, there would be exclusions for these more specific definitions for any person transporting fireworks through Kansas to another state, any person selling consumer fireworks as a seasonal retailer, any person selling consumer fireworks year-round as a permanent retailer, freight delivery companies or common carriers, and out-of-state persons selling, transporting, delivering, or giving fireworks to a licensed manufacturer or distributor. Furthermore, the bill would amend the definition of fireworks season. Under current law, fireworks season is defined as a period determined by the state fire marshal's regulations. And so that's currently begins on June 27th and ends on July 5th. In the bill, fireworks season would be defined as the period from June 20th through July 7th. And it's worth noting that this act, it doesn't regulate the discharge of consumer fireworks by consumers. It regulates when these fireworks can be sold to either professionals or to consumers. And so moving down, you'll see there's a new definition for permanent retailer, which would mean any person engaged in the year-round retail sale of consumer fireworks from a permanent structure at a permanent location within the state. And this would be new because under current law, there's only the seasonal retailer that can only sell to consumers within that limited time from June 27 to July 5th. So this bill would create both the seasonal retailer and then the year-round retailer. And so the importance of this fireworks season is really, I think, to have the state fire marshal be able to designate someone. Are you a year-round retail seller, or are you just a seasonal person? That way someone's not popping up in a tent off the highway. It's not a permanent fixture. They're suddenly selling to consumers in August, right? Having this separate designation would prevent something like that from occurring. Furthermore, Senate Bill 99 would prohibit the retail sale of consumer fireworks through the internet or by mail. It's not something that's addressed by current state statute. All retail sales would have to be made by a registered seasonal or permanent retailer at a physical location registered with the state fire marshal. And on that note, the bill would require any person who's intending to sell consumer fireworks at retail as a seasonal or permanent retailer to register annually with the state fire marshal. The registration would entitle the person to engage in the retail sale of consumer fireworks subject to the Act's provisions and the state fire marshal's regulations. Registration would be effective for 1 year and would require submission of permanent business contact information, sales location addresses, sales time periods, and other information required by the state fire marshal. Senate Bill 199 would add distributor of display fireworks and articles pyrotechnic and unlimited distributor to that current list of licensee types you see in the bill. Additionally, Senate Bill 199 would make it unlawful to possess, purchase, sell, or offer for sale fireworks labeled for professional use only without a current license issued by the state fire marshal. The bill would authorize the state fire marshal to adopt rules and regulations to implement certain provisions of this statute, though arguably that rules and reg authority is a bit redundant because under a separate statute that's not in this bill, KSA 31506, the fire marshal is granted general rules and regs authority to administer the entire Fireworks Act. Senate Bill 199 would become effective upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any preliminary questions.
Thank you. Senator Corson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You did a great job. Thanks for that explanation. My understanding, but I was hoping that you could point me to specifically where I would find this, is that our cities, counties, localities can still set their own regulations for use of fireworks within their jurisdiction. Is that in the bill, or is that somewhere else in statute? Am I correct in that?
It's my understanding that, yes, municipalities can set stricter standards than state law. And so those are the entities that are in charge of regulating consumers who are discharging fireworks throughout the year. We do have a state law in this act concerning making bottle rockets unlawful, but in general, municipalities play a big part in permitting retailers within their jurisdiction.
And is that in this bill, or is that in another statute?
I would need to double check to see exactly if it's covered maybe in more detail in the regulations and the authorizing statute.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You had mentioned that it excludes or eliminates the ability to sell online. Are we selling online today? And if so, what revenue is being made online through online sales today?
I'm not aware of sales happening online, but I'll defer to our conferees who would be more knowledgeable on that.
Very good. Thank you. I would assume that's just a cleaning up of some language, but they can answer that. All right.
Senator Cluse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and kind of a follow-up. You answered part of my question, but so permanent retailers, does that mean they have to have a permanent location?
Correct. As specified in the definition, if I can see that, permanent retailer, it's on page 3, line 27. So let's see. It's a person with a permanent structure at a permanent location within the state.
Senator Dietrich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm kind of following up on what Senator Klump and Senator Cluse asked. So what if you're currently a permanent retailer and you order your fireworks for your store online? Does this prevent you from doing that? You get them delivered like we would order from Amazon. Not that I'd order fireworks from Amazon, but you know what I'm saying? How does that restrict what they currently do in their business? Or does it?
So I'll just read through that applicable language again on page 5, starting on line 33. It says the retail sale of consumer fireworks through the internet or by mail shall be prohibited. All retail sales of consumer fireworks shall be made by a registered seasonal permanent retailer at a physical location registered with the state fire marshal.
Any other questions? Yes. Senator Blue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe this is a question for Kyle, maybe this is a question for the conferees, and I apologize for this. I don't see a definition of what a firework is. Is there a definition of what a firework is? Thank you. I see definition of firework display.
There are certain key terms that are not defined in state statute, and from what I've seen, they're not necessarily defined in and of themselves in regulation, but there are national standards, and I believe some federal regulations that are cited in those regulations that pull down those definitions to apply in the state.
What I'm getting at, and again, this may be not for you, and conferees, please correct me when you have your testimony, is we're seeing more and more of these gender reveals being via fireworks. And if you only can purchase, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't plan when I was gonna have my kid, I tried. And so I could not purchase a smoke bomb of the blue or the red, or blue or the pink. So the question I have is, a smoke bomb gender reveal, could that be purchased at any time versus just the 2 weeks? So again, maybe not a question for you, but that's what I'm getting at is, what is the definition of a firework? Can a smoke bomb be considered a firework or an exciting feature?
I will defer to our conferees
figured.
concerning whether that's a consumer firework or.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Our first, the fiscal note, is that, it's in our documents here? I haven't seen that yet, so we'll see if we can get that. So our first proponent is Jacob Marietta, Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Jacob, sorry, thank you. My name is Jacob Marietta. I work for Jake's Fireworks. Jake is my father. We are a local business. My grandfather and grandmother started selling fireworks during the 30s to make some extra money, and come from a family of teachers who had summers off, so needed work in the summer, so we sold fireworks. Now it has grown to a multi-million-dollar business where I was lucky enough, as my dad said, to be the first one who didn't have to be a teacher in our family. So my family has sold fireworks. We live and die fireworks. It is a wonderful business. It is an interesting business where I'm hoping to be able to change what I tell people all the time, is that I have to make my living in 6 days. So I'm wanting to double that and have to make my living in 12 days now. So, you know, fireworks is interesting as any seasonal business is. Your time to, you know, jump on what opportunities you have is very small. So, state of Kansas, we have a little wild weather in the summer. You know, we come from a place where we put tents out during thunderstorm season. And storms can be very detrimental to our business, especially when, with the current regulations, we have one weekend to sell. So you get one Friday, one Saturday a year for your entire year. If it rains, wind blows, you have a bad day, you can literally take a 40 to 50% loss on your year. So I could be the best businessman in the world, I am not, by the way, plan and do everything correctly, and one thunderstorm can literally set my company back by half. So part of what we're looking for here is to open that up to where we can, you know, have a second weekend, another chance. If we have a bad couple of days, we've got some extra days to make up, to have a chance at, you know, making some more profit for us. I think one of the interesting things, and we have a couple of them here, is fireworks is also interesting that we're in the 99 percentile that our business is ran by nonprofits. So we spend the whole year planning, buying, setting up, getting our situation in the best way possible, and then we hand it off to church groups, baseball teams, you know, anyone we can find that can operate that. And it is, I will think, you know, these guys will speak to it better than me, but the biggest fundraiser they'll have all year, and we fill a lot of budget gaps for churches, for school groups, for sporting teams and that. And, you know, we're all gambling together on that weekend to where, you know, is Capon going to be able to travel in a nice bus or a bad bus? It's going to come down to if it rains on a Friday night in July. And, you know, they'd like to stretch that out a little bit and have a little better, you know, a little more opportunity to spread the seasonality out to a 12-day window.
Thank you. Would you address Senator Blue's question?
Yeah, so that's a great question that comes up all the time. So there's a couple definitions in there of a safe and sane item and a full power item. So in Kansas, smoke bombs are, as far as I know, considered a safe and sane. They're allowed to be sold year round. And that's one of the other issues with the permanent stores being open, is it also comes down to a gray area of, can I sell or can I not sell that? Even though it's under the fireworks laws, it still is classified as a firework to be sold during that window.
Thank you. So just to follow up on that, if I do my gender reveal in November, where do I buy my smoke bomb?
Currently Missouri. That's
Okay.
what we're wanting to fix.
Okay. Okay, that's what I was curious. I mean, I'd have to pre-plan and buy one or the other and hope that maybe someday I'll have a baby and I have to do it that way, but I have to buy through a licensed firework. I couldn't just go to Walmart and buy a smoke bomb.
Correct, because of the times and the dates, that's where the permanent side, the stores that did select and, the municipalities that gave them the right to be open, then you'd be able to go to a permanent store in the state and, pick up your fireworks there.
So what about, sorry, Mr. Chair, what about when it comes to, I'm having a brain fart on this. What's the last day of the year? New Year's Eve. What about New Year's Eve? And I go to Walmart and they have the little poppers and they have all that. What is that considered?
Those are classified as a non-firework novelty because there's almost no to trace amounts of an explosive in them. So, and a lot of them now are air-powered and stuff like that. That's kind of what has changed because of these regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Jacob. My best to your parents. There are a couple of items in the bill that there were opponents to. One of them is the registration, and I was wondering if you would mind if the bill was amended to not require the registration.
And I'll be honest, I am not the legal mind of that. I think my understanding of that was to make sure that over the last few years, we've fought a lot of what we call the pop-up stands, the illegal people selling on Craigslist, people throwing up websites to not have to pay the local, permitting fees and sales tax. So by registering, we knew where they were because in Wichita, Kansas, they changed the law last year because of this, because people were selling. Well, technically, it wasn't illegal if you weren't registered. It was a weird little loophole that they were selling without paying tax, without paying that. It was wrong, but they didn't have to. So they changed the rule to make you register. So that way, if you were registered, you had to make sure they had a sales tax number, were following all the proper rules.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, so you don't want to see that change? You want to keep the registration in? There's opposition to the bill, and they will support the bill if that registration comes out. And it's not anybody trying to break the law. They just are the mom and pop shops is who they're trying to help out.
I think we're interested in the greater good of the bill. So yeah, if there's wording that needs to be changed to get it through, I think, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you very much.
Our next conferee for proponents is Chris Bloomer from Cape and Mount Carmel High School.
Mr. Chairman, members, good afternoon. My name is Chris Bloomer, and I serve as the principal at Cape Mount Carmel Catholic High School in Wichita, Kansas. We operate a fireworks stand location annually in Andover and have for the last 13 years. The mission of our school obviously is to educate and inform the total person. And so our participation in fireworks helps us fulfill our mission by providing real-world experiences for students. This work gives students opportunities to interact with the public, work on interpersonal skills, and practice customer service. Aside from those educational opportunities, though, this is a school-wide project that not only enhances our community, but it serves as a fundraiser to help complete our annual operating budget. As a private entity, the income is used for building improvements, sports equipment, instruments, and daily budgeted operating expenses. And I think I'm one of probably hundreds, if not thousands, of nonprofits who work to fulfill their operating budget through the summer activity. And by extending it, as Mr. Marietta said, it guarantees maybe a better season for us, more economic opportunities to fulfill that budget. So we'd ask that you consider expanding the current fireworks season to enhance this opportunity for all of our students and allow us to meet our fiscal shortfall. Your vote to pass this legislation is respectfully appreciated.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes, Senator.
Thank you. I would ask the same question about the amendment, and also would you object to an amendment that it took out the internet sales, the question that was asked earlier, and so we dealt with those two issues.
I would not have an opposition to that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. We do have written only. There is Uniontown class of 2026 sponsors. We do have opposition written only. And is the State Farm Marshal here? would, huh? Okay, yes. Yes. Welcome. You do have a neutral testimony, and so appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Chair and Ranking Member, for allowing me to appear before you today. I love the questions that are being asked, and because of that, I'm going to read word for word all 7 pages of our testimony. No, let me, if you will give me a little bit of leeway, I have provided 7 pages of testimony on this, just to kind of educate and try to hit some of those points that actually you're asking. But let me grab, Senator Corson, you were asking about local authorities' abilities to regulate the time and place and type. And in Kansas, and I was searching for it very diligently as far as exact statute, and I'll get that to you. It is in Chapter 31 of the statutes, in which we very clearly, there's a carve out so that localities, political subdivisions of the state can decide how they, if they even want to allow sales. And if those sales happen, how they're done, how they're permitted. A great example of that is in Douglas County, where even though we have a 9-day selling currently retail period in the state, they have a shorter period that they allow in Douglas County. So that is in here. That is not part of this bill. That statute isn't even being touched in this bill. Let's see. Senator Klepp, you were asking about the online sales issue, and that's actually one of the issues we picked up on in here. What we find, well, let me back up. Our view and what we enforce is that fireworks sales in the state of Kansas, under the code that we have adopted, under NFPA, is person to person. So they shouldn't be shipping anything into our state by mail. And we have dealt with some of those issues, and a cease and desist order has dealt with that. As far as, we had some concerns about the language in here about internet sales, because there are those nonprofits, let's say a school, whatever else, that will set out a flyer to all the people and say, hey, we're going to have a stand. If you'd like to pre-order, that will give us the opportunity to make sure we have what you want. And then when the day comes and we open our stand, it'll be there pre-packaged for you. You pay your money, you pick it up, you walk out. And we think that's a useful thing to have. So we did, in our testimony here, provide some alternate language that would very clearly state that fireworks retail sales need to be person to person, but would do away with the internet portion of that. Let's see. So let me just kind of, I hope you have what we've written up. Right now, we're only doing 7 types of permits, and we do that. We are the only of our surrounding states. We are the only state that does not charge any fee whatsoever for fireworks permits, whether they're a distributor, whether they're an operator, whatever else. We do not charge anything. We're a fee-funded agency. We currently have a very small role when it comes to the actual licensing of fireworks, and so we're able to do that. If this bill were to go forward, and we would be increasing that many times, as the senator mentioned about registrations and that sort of thing, we would ask to actually start charging fees so that we could add staff, because we're estimating we'd have to do somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 registrations in those months leading up to the seasonal area, and getting those out in a timely manner, so we're not the people who are backing up the process. And then you get phone calls, and then you call me, and no one's happy. So this would actually increase the number of permits, like I mentioned, and you spoke about that permanent and seasonal retailers. Right now, we don't have any contact at the state level with the retailers. We license the distributors, and then each of those retailers is required to have a copy of the license that we have given to that distributor to show that they've gone through in their Kansas fireworks. And we have found in inspections last year that there were 14 instances out of, I don't have that number in front of me, 170 inspections. We found 14 where they were bringing in from out of state for distributors that weren't licensed in Kansas. It's very simple to fix that because there's no charge. All they have to do is give us the paperwork and we take care of it. But that is something that we're looking at. This would also, just so everyone's clear, in addition to making year-round sales possible, This would also double the length of the seasonal fireworks. So instead of 9 days, it would go to an 18-day period. So that's just something to throw out there. That increases our costs also as our folks go out, inspect these stands and are doing enforcement. You know, I'm not going to get into the whole safety issue too much. I think we all understand that increased time equals increased sales, equals increased fireworks use, is going to equal increased injuries, increased fire losses in the state. So that's just there. That's logical. I think we all can accept that that's just one of those things if we do go forward with this. So on page 3, 4, and 5, you'll see that we made some suggestions of amendments to the bill that would clarify some of the issues you've even brought up as to what is an article pyrotechnic? What does that mean? So we put some of those in. What is a consumer firework? What is a display firework? So we've asked, you know, suggested putting those actually into the bill. There's also some other areas there that we're trying to make sure that things align with. For example, at the top of page 4 in ours, storage means the safekeeping of fireworks in a warehouse or a magazine or comparable appropriate depository. Our code currently says that consumer fireworks with a total quantity of 125 pounds or less of explosive composition can be at the stand and ready for sale. But if they exceed if they can't exceed that, the rest of that has to go into storage. So that is just something that's current code. We have adopted a National Fire Protection Administration code that oversees a lot of the other parts, and that's part of the Kansas Fire Prevention Act. So in addition to the statutes you see, we do have that code backing. I'm sure you have questions. I'll do my best to answer them. I did provide some information on the back as far as those fireworks inspections, some of the fireworks that we actually seized in the last year from stands that were illegal in Kansas. And then there's a nice little piece here, though I wish it were a little bit easier to read, and hopefully it's online for you to look at, that talks about firework injuries in our state and the age groups and what we see. Unfortunately, a lot of children. So.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 questions. First, when you're talking about the inspection process, what are you inspecting?
Okay, so we send out special agents of the fire marshal's office go into a fireworks stand, and they go through and just make sure that the safety regulations are being followed. Do they have fire extinguishers? Do they have a safe egress pathway? It's the very basic type things like that. We find stands that I should have brought some pictures where they are full of trash, and it looks like they've made a bonfire in the middle of their area surrounded by fireworks. It's not a good idea. So those are the things we're looking for, just trying to keep it safe. We don't want anyone to go into one of these stands and touch off something accidentally and us have a disaster.
So do you have a stand or a physical building versus a tent? 2 totally different standards?
No, we go in, as far as what we do it the same no matter what. And we're just going through and looking at, we provide each of the stands ahead of time, that at least it's out there with a list of things they should have. It's available to them. We don't directly have contact with them, but we try to get the counties and whoever else to distribute those. And we just follow up on those items.
Thank you. And then the last question is, we talk about online fireworks sales. What about Facebook Marketplace? If somebody were to purchase it, they want to sell it on Facebook Marketplace, what do we do there? Is that legal? Is it not legal? And so forth.
Great question. I hadn't considered the social media aspect of that, or eBay, right?
Yeah.
But I think really what we're looking at from our side is the retail sale needs to be person to person. And that takes care of it. Would that meet the definition currently? Possibly. I guess I'd have to go back to our council, and I don't know if you're going to go into business on that. Let me know, and we'll find that out for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That will close our hearing on Senate Bill 199, and we'll open our hearing on Senate Bill 227. And again, could you give us an overview of the bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill number 227 amends KSA 7932-211 and provides for different credit percentages for the tax credit for certain expenditures for the restoration and preservation of qualified historic structures based on city populations and the amount of the expenditures. The statute currently provides an income tax, privilege tax, and premiums tax credit in an amount equal to certain percentages of the qualified expenditures incurred in the restoration and preservation of certain qualified historic structures pursuant to a qualified rehabilitation plan by a qualified taxpayer. And those are defined terms in the current statute. The bill itself would change the amounts, the percentages of, and populations of these, of the qualified expenditures for the amount of the tax credit. And I've provided a chart for you at the bottom, at kind of the middle portion there of the bill brief to show you what the current law is there on the left-hand side versus what the bill is proposing on the right-hand side. And what you can see is there's 4 categories for the calculation of the tax credit. Currently, and so for, if you look on the right-hand side, what the bill is proposing is for qualified historic structures in a city with a population more than 50,000, there would be 2 possible credits there. The first one in A1 would be 25% of the qualified expenditures if the amount of the expenditure equals at least $5,000 but is less than $50,000. And then there's another credit, which would be instead $40,000 or 40% of the qualified expenditures if the population of the city is more than 50,000 and the amount of the expenditures is $50,000 or more. Subsection A3 would also be amended slightly. Currently, it's a provision for 40% of the qualified expenditures for expenditures for a structure that's in a city with a population less than 9,500 people. And that would increase to, and that instead would require that the population be 50,000 people or less in order for that 40% of expenditures credit. It would also remain that the expenditures would need to equal more than $5,000. The last provision there is currently a 30% tax credit for expenditures for qualified historic structures that are exempt from federal income tax pursuant to section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, if the amount of the expenditure is $5,000 or more. And that the language of that tax credit, that provision remains very similar, except that the 30% goes to 40%. And I would be happy to answer questions.
Very much. Do we have questions? Any? Thank you very much. Our first proponent is Jennifer Scout. Okay, sorry about that. With the clock tower, behalf of the clock tower. Yes, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee, for hearing us today. My name is Jennifer Sork, and I represent Clock Tower LLC, Clayton Properties LLC, and a variety of other affiliated entities that have investments in historic properties around the state of Kansas, but primarily here in Shawnee County. Our ownership actually owns the Dibble Building in downtown Topeka, which they invested over $1 million in the restoration in that building over the last 10 to 15 years, as well as Kansas Towers. And then most recently, our principal owner, Jim Klossman, purchased the Minneger Tower building on Minneger Hill in Topeka, Kansas. All of these projects together in our experience has brought us here today to request a change in the law to allow for a higher percentage of tax credits to make sure that those investments can come into fruition. Historic preservation, as we know, takes a lot of time and a lot of resources, particularly financial resources. To qualify for these historic tax credits, you have to use specialized vendors and specialized workforce to be able to have the expertise to do it right and do it well. In our experience, these materials and expertise cost 2, 3, 4 times more than just regular going to market, going to your local vendor and contractor to be able to buy those materials, which then puts additional costs and burden on the developer because the lending situation or environment that we're currently in doesn't allow for additional funds to fund historic preservation the way it should be done. The current allowance in the communities of populations less than 9,500, the tax credit eligibility is 40%. And at this time, we're really just asking for the parity in that tax credit to those communities that are larger, as well to those that are 501c3 projects throughout the state of Kansas. The rural communities would still have the lower threshold of the $5,000 threshold to be able to qualify, but we're talking about a larger threshold, at least a minimum of $50,000 in those larger communities. The cost to restore and save our historical buildings does not change based upon a community size. Some of our most iconic buildings are in Kansas communities with large populations, such as Shawnee County and the city of Topeka. These buildings require much more extensive work than just the facade on the outside of a building. This is going to take intensive work and a lot of resources. Therefore, we're here today asking for the change in the law to be able to protect the treasures of Kansas and the same opportunity that's been provided to those in rural Kansas, and to boost economic development throughout our state. And I will happy to stand for questions.
Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for you. It appears that the effective date of this hasn't changed in statute. So is the intent of this change for it to be retroactive?
The intent is not to be retroactive.
Okay. I just wanted to double check. I didn't see that it's from this date forward, but I could be not catching the correct part. Thank you.
I think it's going to correct us.
Mr. Chairman, you are correct in that the language of the current bill does not have an effect, does not have a reference to a particular tax year for the start of the changes. All we have is the effective date of the bill. And from a reviser who works in the tax subject matter, it may be suggested that possibly, it might be something that a legislator might want to consider clarifying in the bill.
Thank you.
You were going to say I was nuts.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Our next proponent is Casey Woods of Emporia. Casey, welcome to the committee.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of the committee. My name is Casey Woods. I'm the Executive Director of Emporia Main Street in Emporia, Kansas. And I just want to say thank you for all of your support of historic tax credits. They've been a phenomenal economic tool in Emporia, Kansas, and in our downtown. Some of the things that we don't think about necessarily with historic tax credits outside of preserving historic buildings are what they add to the community. From a housing perspective, we've been able to add upper story development in our downtown. Just the upper story historic projects that we've added from a residential perspective have added about $385,000 worth of consumer spending per year in our downtown area. Because we have pre-existing streets and pre-existing water and sewer, we don't have to make the infrastructure investments that we normally do with outstanding projects throughout the community. Nonprofits like our historic Granada Theater and a variety of other nonprofit entities within our downtown can flourish and pull people in from broader areas. We have seen a boon in development in our downtown area after the formation of our historic district. We feel like the enhancements to the historic tax credit will improve the ability for developers to come into downtown Emporia, create more upper story housing, create some stellar environments for entrepreneurs as they continue to look for those great opportunities to locate next to other small businesses and make our downtown economy thrive. So I appreciate all of your support, and these enhancements I believe will generate significant increased enthusiasm and development of historic buildings and our community cores.
Questions? None, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here today. There's Terry Humphreys with the Friends of Historic Preservation. Terry, welcome again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And good afternoon, Chairman Alley and members of the committee. I am Terry Humphrey, Executive Director of Friends of Historic Preservation. And this is a nonprofit coalition that advocates for public policies that promote historic preservation and downtown redevelopment in Kansas. So today we're here to support Senate Bill 227, a bill that will enhance an essential economic development program. Since it began over 20 years ago, the state's historic rehabilitation tax credit program has contributed over $1 billion to the Kansas economy. The program rehabilitates deteriorated buildings in rural and urban areas to meet community needs and to celebrate our state's rich culture and history. Historical tax credits bridge gaps in financing needed to bring abandoned and derelict buildings up to code and into service. Only the state's most significant buildings qualify, and historic tax credits are not issued until the projects are successfully completed. Kansas property owners can receive a rehabilitation tax credit of up to 40% of qualified expenditures on qualified buildings. And the tax credit percentage is tiered based on the city's population currently. The proposed legislation would bring equity to the state's historic rehabilitation tax credit program, raising the credit from 25% to 40% on large projects in communities whose populations exceed 9,500 in population. Today, only projects in cities with a population below are eligible for that 40% credit. I want to just take a moment and share with you some examples of tax credit projects in your areas that you may be familiar with. Great Bend's Masonic Lodge, the Zara Hotel and high-rise apartments. Newton's Downtown Historic District, which has flourished, by the way, if you haven't been there, it's beautiful. Also, Wichita's Broadview and Ambassador Hotels, and Lynn County's courthouse and the Prescott School, which is now the Prescott City Library. Very special projects, and just an example of what has been achieved. Friends of Historic Preservation appreciate your consideration of these changes, and I'm happy to answer any questions when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We also have written proponents only. We have 4 of those, and if you be on your packet. I don't have anything else for this committee. I don't know that we have time. Do we have time to move on? Okay. I think what we're going to do is tomorrow we're going to meet virtually. And so what we'd like to do tomorrow is, we will not do any approval of the work. We'll have a hearing tomorrow. So we have 2 hearings on it. What are the bill numbers on those hearings? 117, Senate Bill 117, and Senate Bill 229. We'll be hearing tomorrow. So if not, there's no more for this committee. We are adjourned. Thank you.